Developing news in the past 24 hours. And the good news is that we are hearing that 11 to 17 Iranian nationalists in a sleeper cell that was in the United States has been captured and arrested from committing an attack on U.S. soil. Now, the not so good news is the fact that we've heard there are literally thousands of these around the nation. And the FBI, the Department of Homeland Security, they're trying to track them and stop them from committing these attacks. Now, let me share with you the latest headlines, video footage, so you can see it for yourself as of today, June 25th, 2025. Take a look with me. Border agents warned about a possible terrorist sleeper cells after the Biden administration let in over 700 Iranian illegal migrants into the United States. Now, you can see this article coming out in the last 48 hours, June 23rd, 2025. Here's another one coming out today. ICE arrests 17 Iranian nationalists amid heightened threat levels, and we are hearing major cities are on high alert. And here's another one. ICE arrested 11 Iranian nationals with criminal records or suspected of terrorist ties. The Iranians arrested over the weekend have been taken into ICE custody. They were all men who were living in the United States illegally. Now, I'm going to share with you the video footage and the articles coming out on this, as they were saying that this was an attack in preparation to take place. And President Donald Trump is blaming former President Joe Biden for his border policies on this. If you agree, put a 47 in the comments, hit that like button. Take a look at this clip with me before we dive into some more footage and articles.
Iranian sleeper cells in the United States.
Biden led a lot of super cells, and Biden was an incompetent president and had no idea what he was doing. He hardly ever signed a document. Other people signed documents for him with the auto pen. It was gross incompetence. And among everything else, he let a lot of super cells in, many from Iran. But hopefully we'll take care of them. What Biden did to this country should never be forgotten.
Sir, do you think you'll get the Nobel Peace Prize now, sir?
There you have it, you guys. Donald Trump saying this is the fault of Joe Biden letting in all of those nationalists into our nation. And let me know your thoughts. Do you agree? Like I said, if you agree and you're glad to see what Donald Trump is doing right now, drop a 47 in the comments, hit that like button. And also, I'm going to share with you the latest video footage coming out on this. Now, we're going to get into the details of these nationalists, the city that they were suspected of hitting. Also, I've been sharing with you the lists that have been coming out for quite some time of the warnings, and I shared with you yesterday that we heard that it is being reported that the strikes on Iran's nuclear facilities were not as damaging as suspected. Now, this is conflicting information. Trump is claiming that that is a lie. He is saying that, no, we decimated them and it's over. But there are reports coming out from the Pentagon saying that, no, it just set them back. They still have their capabilities. It's only set them back a couple weeks or a month. Now, at the same time, we also have warnings coming out because they are saying that right now Russia is saying nations are going to be lining up to provide nuclear warheads to Iran, since the United States is messing with their nuclear capabilities. And we're hearing that Iran is threatening retaliation against the United States for what has unfolded with the conflict in the Middle East between Israel and Iran. Now, we're hearing that Donald Trump has said there is a ceasefire agreement done. We're set. It's good. But we'll see where we go from here. Let me know your thoughts. Do you think we're going to be seeing peace or war that is going to be unfolding? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Put peace or put war. But we're going to dive into all of it so that way you can see it for yourself and know exactly what is going on. Now, I'm going to play for you some more video footage here in just a second, giving the details of this sleeper cell that was caught. This title says that the sleeper cell concerns 11 Iranians were arrested by ICE. Now, I'm going to get to the details, but very quickly wanted to mention for you, imagine waking up today and all of your savings is gone. Your safety net, it has vanished overnight. And right now we're hearing that there could be a crash coming. We're seeing instability in our economy. And there have been warnings that have been coming out saying you need to get ready for financial chaos, especially with everything that's going on with global conflict in the world. So right now, silver is a real tangible asset that can help you. You can hold it in your hands. You can put it in your IRA or your 401k, and yet it's still trading well below all-time highs right now. Right now, the dollar is reckless. It's all over the place. There's runaway spending happening with our nation, nonstop money printing, and now it's time to invest in hard assets like silver if you're interested. Now, if you are interested, I wanted to share with you my friends over at Lear Capital. You can call them today at 1-800-411-2430 or go to learram.com. Lear Capital, they'll go ahead and help you with free information. They've got a free Sky High Silver report where you can learn how to protect your valuable assets and what you've built over the years. Your dollars are being devalued while silver demands keep rising. Make the move now, and again, call 1-800-411-2430 or go to learram.com. Again, that's 1-800-411-2430 or go to learram.com, because if things go and fall apart, you're going to want to make sure that you are ready ahead of time. So thank you to Lear Capital making that available to our audience today. Now, let's go ahead and get you caught up as to what we're hearing about these Iranian men that were captured. And we're hearing that these arrests, they were concerned of a sleeper cell attack right now, and cities are on high alert. Let's go ahead and take a look at this video footage so that way you can see it for yourself.
I want to show you this live vantage point that we have there in St. Paul. We do know that there, a man who was among 11 Iranian nationals who were arrested by ICE this past weekend. This, of course, following an American strike on Iranian nuclear sites. And to bring into the conversation now our partners there at Fox 9, I want to bring in Soo-Young Kim with Fox 9 there in Minneapolis. She has much more on this. Soo-Young, thanks so much for being with us here on Live Now from Fox. What else can you tell us about this arrest that was made?
Well, Christina, the Department of Homeland Security says ICE arrested, like you mentioned, an Iranian national on Sunday here in St. Paul. Here's what we do know. DHS officials say 56-year-old Mehran Makari Saheli was ordered to be removed from the U.S. in 2022, but say he remained in the U.S. illegally. Federal officials also say he had been previously convicted of being a felon in possession of a firearm in Minneapolis, where he was sentenced to 15 months in prison. DHS says he's a former member of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps and says he has admitted connection to Hezbollah, which is a U.S. designated foreign terrorist organization. And for now, he remains in ICE custody pending his removal from this country. Christina, back to you.
I have to ask you before I let you go, Soo-Young, as we are following this case, we know that there's a very diverse neighborhoods there in the St. Paul area as well as Minneapolis. Have you heard from any other local leaders responding to this arrest? Anything from them?
And not specifically to this arrest, but there has been a lot of backlash, a lot of discussion from both sides here as those ICE raids continue across the country.
All right, welcome back in Alive Now. I'm Austin Westfall. A live look at the U.S. Capitol, about 10:45 in the nation's capital, 7:45 out west. Let's cover an interesting story that we heard about today. But over the weekend, ICE agents saying they arrested 11 Iranian foreign nationals in 48 hours. That's according to the Department of Homeland Security. Learning more about this from our partners in Minneapolis, because one of those arrests was made there. Let's get the latest from them in this quick report.
The Department of Homeland Security says U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement arrested 11 Iranian nationals in a 48-hour targeted operation. The arrests spanned multiple states. Here's what we know about the man who was taken into custody in Minnesota. DHS officials say ICE arrested 56-year-old Iranian national Mehran Makari Saheli on Sunday in St. Paul. DHS says he's a former member of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps and says he has, quote, admitted connections to Hezbollah, which are U.S. designated foreign terrorist organizations. According to court documents, Saheli was convicted of possessing a fraudulent immigration document in 2009. Then, stemming from that in 2020, court filings show he faced a federal charge for being a felon in possession of a firearm. DHS says he was later sentenced to 15 months in prison for the weapons charge. Federal officials say in June 2022, an immigration judge ordered Saheli be removed from the United States, but say he remained in the country illegally.
Okay, so as they mentioned, 11 total arrested. We've got pictures of 10 of them here via the New York Post. Standing by, we want to welcome in Michael Balboni. He's a former New York Homeland Security advisor. I got to ask you, when we look at pictures of these 10 people, Michael, are these people affiliated with those so-called sleeper cells that we've been hearing so much about? Is this sleeper cell activity or not? What do we know?
What we know is that over the last couple of years, we've had almost over 10 million individuals come to this country, and we don't know who they are, where they are, what their intentions are. That's really what has changed the landscape of this nation's security, and we see it right now. This follows a traditional pattern of whenever there's conflict in the Middle East, it spans out to other parts of the world. And of course, with Iran having been attacked by the United States to take out their nuclear facilities, this has ratcheted up the rhetoric at the very least. But we also know that there's really good intel that says there's a great capability in country right now, should the either Iranian affiliated individuals or folks that want to do things on their own, rogue individuals. And certainly from a cybersecurity perspective, the security forces in the United States are really on high alert for a domestic incident.
Viewers often ask me about the threat of sleeper cells. Two things on that. What are they, is one. Yeah. And secondly, is there any evidence of Iranian sleeper cells in the U.S.? Hard evidence?
So typically, if you take a look at throughout the years from an intelligence perspective, during the Cold War, was when the country was first introduced to the concept of a sleeper cell. That was people who were trained in the ways and customs of the United States. They were sent in to create false identities and families, and then hide amongst us, and then get a note that says, okay, time to go. And then they would either create havoc or they would try to get documents, secrets. That has now changed in the sense that there's an affiliation with the sponsoring agency, or in this case, Iran, where people come into the country. They go to areas where there's a lot of other Arab, in an Arab community, where they kind of go to ground and mix in. And this is, when you listen to what President Trump has been talking about, he's been using ICE to target not just folks that were here illegally, but folks that are members of gangs, have committed crimes, and pose a security risk. And so this is something that the White House has been very focused on, though a lot of people are not saying that he should get credit for doing this. But again, think of 10 million people coming to this country. It's a huge security risk.
You've already touched on this, but I'm hoping you can expand. What are the challenges associated with tracking down, finding even sleeper cells? How do you A, find it, B, how do you track the activity?
Typically what happens is that there's surveillance on individuals, that there are folks within a group that, the undercover agents, you turn somebody in a group, you get intelligence from them. These are the typical police and security operations that are done to try to infiltrate, find out what's going on in a group. Obviously surveillance, wiretaps, again, traditional ways of law enforcement to try to find out whether or not people are committing or planning to commit some kind of crime. Those are the same techniques that are used when you are trying to identify folks who might be a part of an agent or agency that's trying to do something in country. It's always very difficult, again, because we don't know how people came in. It's not like there's a date that that they were in this port of call for the United States, port of entry, and that you can track them from where they went. And if they go to a place like Minnesota, where there's a very large Arab population, well, there might be an opportunity for them to really go to ground and not be discovered. And so it makes it very, very difficult for not only ICE, but for the FBI. And there's a recent report that says, the FBI is really focusing now, shifting away from just simply going after immigrants who are here illegally to folks that may cause a terrorist threat.
One more thing before we go. What do we know about the quantity of Iranians that enter illegally that are not affiliated with any regime-backed group? No doubt there's people like that enter as well.
Sure. It's very important to not think that everybody who came across the border is a terrorist. That's not the case. But I think more important, though, than that is what are the capabilities? What's the training? What's the tradecraft? Like, if I'm an intelligence agency that's an enemy of the United States, and I see the fact that there's kind of an open border, I'm definitely going to send in assets, and for nothing else, just to surveil, to find out information and be able to give that back to the folks that want to know what's going on in the United States and possibly exploit vulnerabilities. So that's really the challenge for all security and law enforcement agencies in the United States right now.
There you have it, guys. And we are hearing that 11, and there's some reports saying 17 Iranian nationalists were captured. And they were saying in Minnesota, ICE arrests 11 Iranian nationalists with criminal records or suspected terrorist ties. The Iranians arrested over the weekend have been taken into ICE custody, where all men were living in the United States illegally. Now, this article coming out yesterday says 11 Iranian nationalists with either criminal records or suspected terrorist ties who had been living in the United States illegally were arrested over the weekend while American warplanes were bombing nuclear facilities in their homeland, federal officials announced on Tuesday. Now, it says, in addition, Immigration and Customs Enforcement agents arrested a U.S. citizen who is alleged to have harbored one of the Iranian nationalists and threatened to shoot ICE officers in the head, the Department of Homeland Security said in a statement. Before President Donald Trump gave the final order for the attack on the nuclear sites, Iran warned that it would unleash terrorist attacks on the United States using sleeper cells inside of the country, NBC News reported on Sunday, citing 2 U.S. officials and a person with knowledge of the threat. So, again, this is coming up. We've been warning about this for quite some time, hearing the warnings from the FBI, and now we are hearing Iran is threatening to do this to the United States. We heard the threats against the U.S. in 2 forms. One was hitting U.S. military assets in the Middle East, their bases, our military bases, or sleeper cell attacks on U.S. soil in U.S. cities where they already have nationalists that have made their way through our borders illegally. They are here already awaiting orders to unleash attacks on our U.S. soil. Now, reading on, it says DHS did not say any of the men who were arrested were suspected of being a part of any terrorist plans, and Homeland Security, Chrissy Nome, said on Sunday that the Department of Homeland Security had not identified any credible threats to the U.S. soil. Unrelated to the arrests, a New York City-based immigration lawyer said ICE took an Iranian client of his into custody Monday, even though he does not have a criminal record, and was granted asylum in August after he told a judge that he faced persecution in Iran for converting to Christianity. So this is the individual that was harboring and housing these people. They gave him no reason for why they took him into custody, the lawyer said. So they're concerned about the individual tied to these ones. But he told me that there were other Iranians with him. So the individual that was housing them, they said there was no issues with him. However, the other ones that he was harboring were the ones that all had criminal records or were tied to terrorist groups. And they're saying were concerns of sleeper cells. Simon said that his 48-year-old client, whom he had asked to be identified only as Ali to protect his family back in Iran, has never broken any U.S. laws. He said Ali immediately applied for asylum after he crossed the border into the country from Mexico on July 1st of 2022. He is a Christian convert from Islam and applied for asylum because he faces persecution for religious reasons if he were to return to Iran. Man, let me know your thoughts in the comments. Do you believe that story? He's saying he's a converted Christian and he wants to seek asylum here in the U.S. Do you believe it? If yes, put yes. If no, put no. This is the same individual they're saying was harboring a lot of these people that are suspected of having terrorist ties that were in the United States that they're saying they believe want to unleash attacks. Do you believe it? Yes or no? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Immigration Judge Richard Bailey, based in Pennsylvania, said at Ali's asylum hearing in August that he found Ali's testimony credible, according to court records. The information he provided during the testimony was consistent with the asylum application and other documentary evidence, including his declaration and the witness declaration, Bailey ruled, according to the records. The government appealed the ruling in September, and while his appeal was being considered, Ali was required to regularly check in with ICE, Simon said. Now, he was supposed to check in today, but yesterday he got a call asking him to come into the center out of Long Island. Simon said he did, and he was taken into custody. Department of Homeland Security did not immediately reply to a request for comments about Ali's arrests. Now, in announcing the 11 arrests, Assistant Homeland Security Secretary Tricia McLaughlin said DHS has been full throttle on identifying and arresting known or suspected terrorists and violent extremists that illegally entered this country. And these are the ones that were associated with this individual that they are saying had no record, had no ties, yet he's harboring all of these individuals. All of the Iranians arrested over the weekend and taken into ICE custody are men, and 5 of them have previous criminal convictions for grand larceny, drug and firearm possessions, and other crimes, it says. So, man, let me know your thoughts. We're hearing that there are those that have strong ties that were arrested being harbored by ones that have no ties whatsoever. And you're going to be hearing how they're saying that this is extremely difficult. It's like finding a needle in a haystack, because they said we have no idea who we can trust and who we cannot trust. People that are from Iran that are here, we just don't know. And they're saying that this is a real threat right now as a result of the open border policies that took place. And as you saw, Donald Trump saying this is the fault of Joe Biden and the previous administration with their border policies. If you agree, drop that 47 in the comments for support for Donald Trump. And also take a second, hit that like button for me. Let's take a look at some more video footage coming out just 5 hours ago today on this, so you can see it for yourself.
Well, the FBI is preparing for possible retaliation from Iran, pivoting its resources to counterterrorism and cybersecurity efforts. ICE, meantime, arrested 11 Iranian nationals since Sunday, all of whom were in the country illegally. They include suspected terrorists, even a former member of the Iranian forces. Joining me now on this, June 25th, is U.S. Interior Secretary Doug Burgum. Secretary, it's great to have you. Thanks so much for being here this morning.
Great to be with you, Maria, always.
So I want to get your take on this as we now worry about the potential for retaliation with potential terrorist cells in the U.S., sleeper cells they're called, by Iranians. How big of a threat is this from your standpoint?
Well, I think it's a real threat, and obviously this is just a carryover of the disastrous open border policies of Joe Biden. Few people understand that the 41% of the southwestern border is land that is managed by Interior. That's why we worked with the Department of Defense with this Roosevelt Reservation. We transferred a 60-foot strip of land along all the New Mexico border and into California. Theodore Roosevelt thought of this 120 years ago, which is, hey, at some point people may want to be smuggling stuff, is the words that used in his term, but whether it's people or drugs. But it's not just 1,000 or so Iranians that we know are in the country illegally that came through. There's a number that is unknown, the unknown number of people that were unapprehended, came through undetected, weren't detained, weren't interviewed. That number is also in the millions. And so it's a real risk for our country. And again, President Trump has done a fantastic job of shutting it down. And the big, beautiful bill has got dollars in to secure our border. And you don't have national security if you don't have border security. President Trump understands that, and he's doing something about it.
Yeah, and this is all a result of the last 4 years where Joe Biden had a wide open border and no vetting process in place. And of course, we don't even know if that was Joe Biden's idea or the auto pen, Neera Tandem, who testified yesterday. But look, I digress. Your portfolio, I'm glad you mentioned federal lands, because your portfolio is obviously very broad, including the management of those federal lands. What do you want to say about the Chinese wanting to acquire land in the United States?
All right, there you guys have it. Now they're switching over to talk about what's going on with China. I want to stay focused on the sleeper cells and the concerns of those attacks. Now, in addition to that, let's take a look at this article that came out in the last 48 hours. Border agents warn about a possible terrorist sleeper cell after the Biden administration let in over 700 Iranian illegal migrants. And you heard him say that this is due to the poor border policies of the Biden administration. Now, it says Customs and Border Protection is warning agents about possible terrorist sleeper cells in the United States after more than 700 Iranian nationalists were led into the United States after crossing illegally under the Biden administration, according to a leaked memo obtained by the Post. Now, Iranian migrants are considered to be special interest aliens and are supposed to undergo additional vetting by the feds for possible terrorist ties. Under the Biden administration, over 1,500 migrants were caught crossing the border illegally and nearly 50% of them were released back into the United States of America, according to Fox News. Border agents are now being put on high alert of the possibility of Iranians using the border to carry out attacks on the U.S. following the Trump administration strikes on Iran's nuclear sites over the weekend. So we are hearing that we are on high alert. So if you are in a major U.S. city, and I've gone through the FBI sleeper cell list in previous videos, they have said some of the ones I can remember right offhand would be Seattle, Washington, Washington, D.C., all throughout the state of New York, San Diego, California, Los Angeles, California, Houston, Texas, Austin, Texas, San Antonio, Texas, Boca Raton, Florida, Raleigh, North Carolina. There's several of them. They're saying especially if you were in a densely populated major U.S. city, you need to be on alert, high alert at this time, after Iran has made this one of their threats for retaliation against the United States. Now, CBP Commissioner Rodney Scott cited Iran's hatred for the United States and their desire to harm America and Americans in Saturday's memo to border agents. Over the past 4 years, thousands of Iranian nationalists have been documented entering the United States illegally, and countless more were likely in the unknown and known gotaways, Scott wrote. Though we have not received any specific credible threats to share with you all currently, the threat of the sleeper cells or sympathizers acting on their own or at the behest of Iran has never been higher, he added. Scott asked border agents to remain hypervigilant and continue to take appropriate precautions while maintaining a heightened level of situational awareness both on and off duty. Now, the Trump administration carried out surprise strikes Saturday night on Iranian nuclear facilities in Fordow, Natanz, and Esfahan, dubbed Operation Midnight Hammer, in an effort to cripple the Islamic Republic's nuclear weapons development. Now, the alert comes after Iranian officials warned President Trump during last week's G7 summit that they would use sleeper cells to launch attacks on American soil if the U.S. chose to attack. Two U.S. officials told NBC News. So this was a direct threat, a warning to the United States. We went ahead with those attacks. So now the concern is Iran actually activating these sleeper cells to do attacks here on U.S. soil in U.S. cities. And that is why we also saw, like I shared with you over the weekend, those arrests of those 11, and we're hearing some reports of 17 Iranian nationalists that they said had terrorist ties that were here in the United States illegally, and they believe associated with sleeper cells. Now, on Sunday, the Department of Homeland Security issued a terrorism alert that warned officials to be on the lookout for Iranian-led attacks over the next 3 months by terror cells inspired to retaliate following Saturday night's strike. Oh, wow. So this is the first time that I'm seeing a timeline put on this. They're saying over the course of the next 3 months to be on high alert. Now, the likelihood of a violent extremist in the homeland independently mobilizing to violence in response to the conflict would likely increase if Iranian leadership issued a religious ruling calling for retaliatory violence against targets in the homeland, the Department of Homeland Security said in a statement. The FBI similarly has warned that Iran has a history of targeting U.S. interests, and they are likely to increase their efforts in the near term, the New York Times reported. I can tell you we are on high alert, and everyone is looking at that very closely. Attorney General Pam Bondi said Monday at a House Appropriations Committee hearing. So there you have it, you guys. In fact, let's go ahead and take a look at some video footage on that so that way you can see it for yourself. Let's take a look at this. It says, Bondi says officials are on high alert amid Iranian sleeper cell threats. This coming out in the last 24 hours. Let's go ahead and take a look.
The FBI is increasing its surveillance on potential threats of Iran-backed terror plots in the United States after the Biden administration's open border policies put us all at risk.
There was a report, of over 1,500 Iranian nationals that have entered the country illegally over the last several years.
It's well over 1,000 have entered. Yes, I don't know if it's quite up to 1,500, but yes, it's well over 1,000 have entered our country. And I can tell you we are on high alert, and everyone is looking at that very closely.
So let's bring in former CIA operations officer and host of the Wright Report podcast, Brian Dean Wright. Good morning to you, Brian. Thanks for coming on.
Very good morning.
Good morning. So, yeah, this was a big story yesterday. 729 were released, Iranians, illegals, released into the United States under the Biden administration. So don't we have to assume among them there are terrorists in our country?
Well, I think that any reasonable person would. I mean, if you look at the broader number, 9 to 10 million that came across over the course of the Biden 4 years, even if just 0.1% of those turned out to be Iranians, whether they be declared or the gotaways, we have a problem. So I think that any reasonable person would say, yes, there is an illegal problem, either one declared or through the gotaways. Moreover, those individuals obviously traveled with other illegals who are desperately poor and in many cases are looking for money. Hezbollah does pay people to engage in criminality. We know that's true all across the world. We have a really horrific case down in Brazil where they paid a musician upwards of $100,000 who was a Brazilian man. They paid him $100,000 to go target Jewish people or Jewish targets in Brazil. So absolutely, Hezbollah is a very, very challenging, very dangerous threat. They create these sleeper cells. We know that they've done that in this country. 2017, 2019, we wrapped up 2 cells in New York and other places. So it's real. The threat is real. And it's not just the illegal migrant crisis. That's a big part of it. Yeah. But it is much, much bigger than that as well.
Well, Brian, we know that there are Iranian assassination squads. Do you know where they are? And is it inevitable that we'll be attacked?
Well, let's talk about where they are. We know that there are a lot of communities of people with Iranian backgrounds or Lebanese backgrounds in Los Angeles, throughout Michigan, New York City, unfortunately. So those are the places, in addition to Northern Virginia, Washington, D.C. area. I think my colleagues are looking at those 4 locations, the FBI looking at those 4 locations. Will we be hit? The real question here is who's protecting us? President Trump has promised to bring down hell and fury upon Tehran if they attack us in this country. Mm-hmm. That threat, I think, is what prevents this country from getting hit. So do we have these saboteur teams inside of this country? Yes, I think that is the answer. The question is, will they hit us? The Ayatollah and the regime are looking at President Trump and saying, if we do, we're gone. So that is what is protecting us, the wrath of President Trump. So I think we should all be very grateful for that man this morning.
Okay, Brian, also the State Department's warning Americans that are traveling to Sweden that Iran might be directing affiliated criminal gangs to carry out attacks on American tourists. So is it safe to travel abroad? And are there any countries, Sweden, obviously, we're being warned, any other countries you'd advise people not to go to this summer?
Well, here's the bad news. Hezbollah has been operating throughout all of Europe over the past 3 or 4 years. We have examples of this in France, in Germany, the UK. Just back in May, we had 4 Iranians who came across the English Channel saying that they were asylum seekers, but in fact, they were Iranian saboteurs. They were there to kill Jewish people, blow up the Israeli embassy in London. We have that example, obviously, in Berlin, where the Berlin police chief has said you can't go into certain neighborhoods in Berlin if you are gay or Jewish, for example. And that is because of the Islamist threat more broadly. So we have our Iranian terror cells using criminal groups, by the way. It's not just Hezbollah. Iran will direct criminal cells throughout Europe to attack lots of different targets. And they use kids as young as 12 in Sweden, for example. So I can't tell you that there are specific countries that you should go to or not, because unfortunately, Iran, not only do they have the Hezbollah cells, or will they use cover of asylum seekers, but they will hire these kids as young as 12 to engage in criminality. These kids are connected to gangs. So bottom line, it's going to be a very, very dicey summer. And Europe doesn't have a President Trump to protect them. We do. We should be very grateful to that man.
There you have it, you guys. Let me know, are you grateful for Donald Trump? If so, drop a 47 in the comments. Hit that like button. You heard him say that they're willing to use kids. They're willing to use people that are innocent. And as we saw with the 11, or we're also hearing reports of 17 nationalists that were arrested. Take a look. Coming out today, ICE arrests 17 nationalists amid heightened threat levels. And we're hearing that they actually were being housed by individuals that had no ties to terrorism or any crimes at all, but all of them had ties to that. You can see criminal records, suspected terrorist ties for all the ones that were arrested. So they're saying to be vigilant, be on the lookout for these sleeper cell groups, these individuals that have made their way into the United States. They're saying there are thousands that want to commit crimes, atrocities, attacks here on U.S. soil. Let's take a look at some more video footage that has come out in the last 24 hours so you can see it for yourself.
The Trump administration is preparing for possible enemy sleeper cell attacks inside the U.S. after Operation Midnight Hammer in Iran. One part of that concern, we now know 1,504 Iranian illegals who were detained at our southern border during the Biden administration were released. More than half of them released into the U.S.
For all we know, they may have gotten sleeper cells into the country during Joe Biden's wide open border. So the threats are serious.
They are here, they are active, and that's what we need the FBI Director Kash Patel to be keeping after for all of our safety.
The administration is being vigilant. Law enforcement across the country is being vigilant. But it is a real danger because we've had 4 years of open borders.
Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem briefed the nation's governors yesterday. They are grateful for Noem's help as they are having to step up security measures just in case to protect people in their states. Mark Meredith is in Washington, D.C. Mark, I've said it before, all hands on deck.
Harris, that certainly appears to be the case. Good morning to you. The threat of Iranian attacks on Americans abroad and here at home is real. Homeland Security officials have briefed the nation's governors, telling them to stay on alert. We also got a bulletin from DHS about what they're worried about. They say the likelihood of violent extremists in the homeland independently mobilizing to violence in response to the conflict would likely increase if Iranian leadership issued a religious ruling calling for retaliatory violence against targets in the homeland. Already, several U.S. cities have increased their security posture. There is extra security at some places of worship. We know that the NYPD is also watching these developments and tracking some of the diplomatic sites around the Big Apple as well. The State Department, it's also been warning Americans who are traveling or living abroad to exercise increased caution. It's urging people to check travel advisories, which are updated regularly. Top Republicans, including Vice President Vance, say the U.S. is concerned about the potential for attacks within the homeland, given how many people have crossed into the U.S. over the last few years without proper vetting.
We're doing everything that we can to keep our people safe. And this is one of the reasons why border security is national security, is if you let a bunch of crazy people into your country, those crazy people can eventually take action. We're going to do everything that we can to make sure that doesn't happen and to keep Americans safe.
Now, the threat of attacks by Iran and its proxies on U.S. officials isn't necessarily new. We saw in 2022 Iran targeting Republicans who helped coordinate the attack on Qasem Soleimani. People also connected to Iran have targeted U.S. officials in 2023 and President Trump himself last year. In February, the White House also warned about this very possibility. The National Security Team saying Iran has also directed its proxies to launch sleeper cells. Harris?
Mark, thank you. Dan Hoffman is a Fox News contributor and former CIA station chief who served in the Middle East. Dan, thank you for being here. First of all, talk to me about forming a wall against the sleeper cells. What are we up against potentially?
Well, first, I just want to emphasize that one of the strategic implications of the strikes on Iran's nuclear facilities was to achieve escalation dominance, whereby we would deter Iran from launching any sort of retaliatory strikes and induce Iran to negotiate with us in good faith, which is something they have not done yet. When it comes to sleeper cells, extraordinarily difficult to track them. It means that we've got to work very, very closely with the intelligence community. That means DNI, Tulsi Gabbard has to ensure that her agencies are collaborating together, enabling one another, and then working with state and local and federal law enforcement as well. And for citizens out there watching this program, if you see something, say something. So many times we've been able to detect threats way out left of boom before something bad happens because of a citizen who was on the watch and spotted something that didn't look quite right and informed their local police or the FBI, and we were able to take action and preempt an attack and save folks from being harmed.
We're in a weird position right now, societally. People have seen something and they have said something. And yet they let those university on campuses anti-Semitism rallies turn into near riots and very violent in some cases here in New York, Columbia. So you've had people who've been told, yeah, you said something, you saw something, but not everybody was quick to move. Given this political landscape right now, how much do you think that compromises the ability in some areas to respond and react and work with the federal government to protect us as citizens? I don't want to plant negative seeds. I'm just taking a look at the reality on the ground.
Yeah, I didn't see that when I served at CIA. I'm not sure whether that's true now or not. I think what is important is for the Trump administration to exercise executive leadership on this issue, and we're seeing that with the Secretary of Homeland Security engaging with governors, not just from red states, but blue states as well. This is an American national security challenge for all of us, and for members of Congress to do the same, and state and local representatives to be on the same page here to protect one another. And you don't want to see any rollover collateral damage from things that might have happened in the past impacting a threat that is materializing in the near future.
Oh, that's very well put. Thank you, Dan. I appreciate it. Iran's former foreign minister is in Russia today, and he's asking that friend and ally, Vladimir Putin, for more support. Yesterday, the Kremlin warned multiple nations are ready to arm Iran with nuclear weapons. And at a UN Security Council emergency meeting, Russia's ambassador said this.
Russia condemns in the most decisive terms the irresponsible, dangerous and provocative actions committed by the USA against the Islamic Republic of Iran. Washington, yet again, demonstrated its complete contempt for the position of the international community.
Well, China is echoing that criticism. It claims the U.S. strikes violate the UN Charter and international law, and they are raising tensions in the Middle East. So they're pointing the finger at us, Dan.
Yeah, well, that's the height of hypocrisy coming from Russia, which invaded Ukraine and has launched barbaric kinetic strikes on innocent Ukrainian civilians in their hospitals and neighborhoods and maternity wards. I think in this case, look, this was the Deputy National Security Advisor, Medvedev. I know him well from time I've spent in Moscow. He's even saying that Iran was pursuing a nuclear weapon and that they will continue to do so. I think what he's doing reminds me of old Soviet arms control negotiator back in when the days of the Soviet Union. Max Kampelman, U.S. arms control negotiator, used to say that the Russians or the Soviets used to like to put a boulder in the middle of the road and charge us to remove it. I think Vladimir Putin just wants to remind us that Russia can be hard on us and can try to extort us on an issue of importance to us to try to gain maybe some concessions in other places. I have no doubt that the Trump administration will stand up strong to that sort of tomfoolery.
Dan Hoffman, thank you. Appreciate your time and your expertise always.
There you have it, you guys. And again, I reported to you on that as we had heard that Russia has come out and said, give Iran nuclear warheads. They said the United States wants to destroy their nuclear efforts. Well, we might just go ahead and give them nuclear weapons. In fact, we're going to have nations lining up to provide that to Iran. And Iran, as you know, is the one that has said, death to America, death to Israel. They call Israel the little Satan. They call the United States the big Satan. And they are saying that they're working on an ICBM program right now. We heard this in the video I played for you earlier. Ted Cruz saying, why do you need an ICBM, which literally is an intercontinental ballistic missile to hit Israel, who is your neighbor? They don't. They need an intercontinental ballistic missile to hit the United States. And they want the nuclear warheads and the ICBMs, those missiles, to be able to cause destruction to the United States. And that is why we have heard the nuclear warnings and the high alerts for strikes for the United States. Let me know your thoughts right now. Are you concerned about sleeper cells, nuclear attacks against the U.S., and the threats that are coming from Iran right now? If you are concerned, put yes. If no, put no. In the comments, let me know your thoughts. And do me a favor, if you haven't done so yet, take a second, hit that like button, subscribe to stay up to date. It's totally free. Why not? I'll be sure to keep you up to speed on everything. All the articles I reference, they're hyperlinked in the description. Try to hold myself to the highest level of accountability to my audience. Cite the sources, put it on the screen, read right from it, play the video footage so you can see the dates, the sources, and know and rest assured that this is the latest. But that is it, you guys. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm seeing those yeses pouring in, so I'll be sure to keep you up to date as more information comes out. And we are hearing that one group has already been arrested in Minnesota. A sleeper cell, 11 to 17 individuals, Iranian nationals that made their way into the United States illegally with ties to criminal records and terrorism in the United States. But they have been thwarted. But the question is, are we going to be able to stop the rest of these groups before they attack? We will see, and I will keep you up to date. But that is the latest, you guys. Thank you so much for joining me. I'll catch you in the next one. Take care. God bless. This is Steve.